Hey guys, welcome back. This is lesson 6, saving your session. So the instant that you've got an idea going that you think has potential, so anything that you're not going to throw away, that you think you would want to work more on in the present moment or later, the very first thing you're going to want to do is save your session. Now there's a couple ways of going about this. Now I'm going to demonstrate a method that I've developed that's worked very well for me, hasn't let me down yet. Keep in mind that there are other ways of going about this, but whatever your method, being organized is a staple of any good production workflow, and it will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache now and in the future as you dig deeper into Ableton. So with that said, let's get started. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is, once you have your idea going in Ableton, you'll notice that this still says Untitled at the top, so we haven't saved it yet. What you're gonna wanna do is jump into Finder, and you're going to want to pull up a new folder, or a new Finder window. I'm in my own home folder now. I'm gonna go to Music, and we've already created a folder called Live and a folder called Samples. What I'm going to do is right-click and make a new folder, put a space, and then in all caps, Sessions. Okay? This is where I'm going to save all of my sessions to. So it's good to have a place on your hard drive specifically devoted to sessions. I see a lot of people saving their work to their documents folder, to their desktop, to random places, and it's a good practice to consolidate all of your live sessions into one folder, wherever that may be. I personally found it's just a lot easier for me, just thinking logically that would be Music and then a new folder called Live. Ableton Live will automatically create a folder called Ableton for your user library. I like to delineate and make a different folder for my actual personal samples and sessions. So once you've got your sessions folder created, what you want to do is, you can close that out now. You're going to go back into Live, okay, go to File, and go to Save Live Set. And that's the way that you would do it by mousing around. The quick key command is Command S, and that will pull up the same Finder window to save your work. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to navigate to the folder I just created, and what I'm gonna do now is save my session file, my .als, directly into my sessions folder. Now what you're gonna notice is that Ableton will automatically create a project folder for this session file automatically, so I don't need to create a project folder inside sessions. What I'm gonna do is name it exactly like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna name it exactly like this. The year, the month, and then the day in that month. I'm gonna put a space, an underscore, and then another space, and then I'm gonna give this session a title. And what I found is that the more unique the title, just to start off with for now, the more unique the title, the more you're gonna remember what is in that session later on without having to open every single session to hear the idea. So I'm gonna go Ableton Online, first save ever, okay? And I'll probably remember that in the future. Hit enter, it's gonna save it, okay? And you'll notice if we go back to Finder, go back to our sessions folder, here's the project folder, here's the session itself, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add sessions to my sidebar, just like I added samples, so I can quickly jump back into my sessions folder anytime I need to. Okay, that's the basics. Now I've got this idea, as you can see, in Ableton saved. It's locked in. All of my work is safe, it's saved, and I can either close this session and reopen it later, or I can move on, but at least I know my work up to this point is saved. Okay, let's say I change something. Let's say over on this MIDI track over here, I go and I add an instrument. Okay, I'm just gonna add any instrument, and it doesn't really matter what that is. Okay, now I wanna save this. I've done something major to the project. Anytime you add something, or you change something, or you remove something, anytime you make a major change, you're gonna wanna save what's called a project iteration. And this is so that you can keep track not only of your progress throughout the composition of your session, of your project, but also so that you can take notes. And a third ancillary benefit of doing project iterations is that just in case a specific session file, a .als file, is corrupted, you have backup, you have other iterations of that session. So it's kind of like project insurance. So the way that you make an iteration is you can either go File and Save Live Set As, okay, and it brings you right back to the same project folder. And all I'm gonna do is I'm going to put a 0.01 and enter, okay? And if you go back into Finder, you're gonna notice that I've got my original file and I've got my iteration, okay? What I'm gonna do to my initial file, the first file I ever saved, is put a .oo there, okay? What this is going to do is it's going to give me a list chronologically of all of my sessions in order. So if I made another iteration, what I could do is come back in here and put a 0.02. Okay, now if I jump back into Finder, you see that it's chronological and you have 99 versions you could possibly save, okay, with today's date. So if you make 99 changes in a day, you're really making a lot of iterations. I don't think I've ever gone over 10 to 15, maybe 15 max in a day, and 12 to 14 hour workday. So you don't have to do a lot of iterations, but when you make a major change, be sure to save an iteration. And the other thing you can do is don't be afraid to come in here, and when you make that iteration, let's say the next one is 0.03, let's say I added something, let's say I added bass patch, or I added a synth loop, take some notes in your file name, and all of those notes will be there so you can know exactly where you've made changes and what you've done. So let's say you made 5 more iterations below this and you want to go back to where you just added that bass patch. You know that you did that on 0.03. Okay, let's say we jump into tomorrow. As soon as the date changes, so should the date in your file name. And what you can do is you can go ahead and begin anew your iterations. I'm gonna go 0.01 again, starting over at 0.01 when it's a new day, okay? And again, jumping back into Finder, you'll notice that 0.01 is after 0.03, but that's because I have a new day. So this is a very, very handy way to accomplish a few different things. You're locking in your progress as you go. You can take notes to remind yourself of your progress and what you've done. Everything in your progress chain remains chronological, and your iterations within the day remain chronological. So it's completely up to you how many of these you want to save. If you feel like you're overloading your brain with too many iterations, don't save as many, and just make sure you do it when you make huge major changes in your project, okay? Or if you're like me and you're just a bit OCD, feel free to go crazy with these. You can save as many as you want, make as many notes as you want, and it really comes in handy later, and it's just always a good practice to be organized and to be on top of what's been saved when. So it's just a good practice. Now, another very, very important thing to get in the practice of doing in your workflow in Ableton is collect all and save. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to File and click on Collect All and Save. And it's gonna pull up this pop-up. What you're gonna wanna make sure you do is make sure all 4 of these are clicked yes, and click OK. Notice how this is copying every single one of these WAV files that I've dragged in from another place on my hard drive into this session. It's going to take all of those samples and consolidate them into a folder within your project folder called samples. imported, and here are all of the loops that I've dragged in, okay? If I had edited or consolidated, you'd see a folder called consolidated here, and I'll show you an example of that in a future lesson. But doing a collect all and save regularly is essential to your workflow. I can't stress it enough. Always, always, always collect all and save. Collect all and save is going to do a few things for you. It's going to take all of those WAV files and patches and other assets that you're going to need to play back your session correctly and put them in one place. So just in terms of that organizational strategy that we've been discussing that's so important to your workflow, and it's going to save you a lot of headache later on, okay? This is just one more step in that strategy. Also, if you're collaborating with somebody else and you send them this project, okay, it's going to now include all of the WAV files necessary to play back that session correctly. If you didn't collect all and save and you just sent them this project folder without those samples, Ableton is going to open up on their end and say, oops, sorry, we don't have all of those files, and they're not going to hear what you were hearing on your end. So collaboration is a reason why you'd want to collect all and save. Another reason is if you're using a rotational hard drive, not a solid state hard drive, but a rotational hard drive, now you're taking all of these files that were at different places on your hard drive and you're putting them in one place, and it's going to make your hard drive read speeds and playback speeds in Ableton much faster, and it's going to extend the life of your hard drive over time. Okay, so another reason why you're going to want to collect all and save early and often is an often overlooked aspect of production. And what you're going to want to do is collect all and save to future-proof your productions, to future-proof your sessions. What do I mean by future-proofing? Future-proofing your projects by consolidating all of the necessary assets to play back your session means that, let's say you are done with this track, it sounds great, but in a year you want to open it up and bounce the stems because somebody wants to buy the track, or somebody wants to remix the track, or you want to go back in and mix the track or master the track, or any of a number of reasons why you'd want to reopen the session at a later date and work on it, or use the material inside of the session or inside of the project. If you haven't done a collect all and save, if you haven't collect all and save and made sure that all of the audio and all of the assets needed to play back the session aren't in your session folder, then what happens if you maybe move your samples folder, or some of the samples in your samples folder, or deleted some, or you start using an external hard drive for certain samples and you move things around? There's a million things that can happen in a very short amount of time that would take samples such as these or other assets that you need to play back your session, and they might be in a different location. Now you're either going to have to go through your hard drive one by one and find each and every one of these exact original samples, which, trust me, is a bore and kills your momentum while you're producing. Or even worse, maybe some of these samples that were other places on your hard drive aren't even there anymore and they don't exist, and now you're kind of SOL because you don't have the assets you need and they're gone, and you either have to remember off the top of your head where you got them from in the first place, hope they're still there to re-download or to find again, or you're just not going to be able to use that session. So save yourself a lot of time and potentially a lot of money later on by future-proofing and collecting all and saving. So I can't stress enough the importance of collect all and save in your production process. It just solves so many problems and enhances your production workflow immensely. So that's the basics of saving your session. Again, can't stress it enough. Every single time you save, collect all and save, make sure to include all 4 of these when you collect on save. And that about wraps it up for lesson 6. See you guys in lesson 7.